Good afternoon to you. It is now 3:06 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up this hour, Josh Boswell is a reporter for the Daily Mail, and he's the man who broke the story on Doug Emhoff. Doug Emhoff beating up his ex-girlfriend. Josh has the latest. She is going public with her remarks on Doug Emhoff. Josh will talk to us about that. Ed Morrissey's here from 4 o'clock from Hot Air. We'll discuss the chaos inside of Kamala Harris's campaign. Emily Jashinsky is here at 5 o'clock as the left resorts to Trump is Hitler yet again. And then Ian Pryor is here at 5:30. We'll get an update on what's going on in Loudoun County schools as parents demand answers about MS-13. The school board shuts them down, and now the parents are fighting back in a big way. You can join us, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Where to begin? Well, let's talk about just the attitudes on both sides of the aisle right now. It is crystal clear that Republicans feel like they have the momentum, that the early vote is working to their advantage, that Donald Trump is performing very well, and the election machine that's supporting him all across the country is working very aggressively to bring in those votes. And you should consider yourself a part of that machine. To the extent that you can get more votes out, that would be a really, really big deal. In fact, it could be the deciding factor in this election, because today we get some new information out of the Commonwealth of Virginia. A brand new poll showing that President Trump is within a single point, just 1 point right now, of winning in Virginia. He's 1 point back on Kamala Harris. That is a massive, massive deal. And I want to let me get you the actual survey here. This is Quantas Insights. They have Kamala Harris at 49%, Trump at 48% in Virginia. This is a survey that we've been waiting for this week because they were telling us it's going to be released Friday. It is a survey of 725 likely voters with a margin of error of 3.6%. What this tells us is that this is a neck-and-neck race in Virginia. And if you don't believe that survey, perhaps you'll believe President Trump himself, because his internals must be telling him right now that Virginia is in play. We talked to Michael Whatley yesterday, the RNC chairman, and we asked about this. And he seemed very inclined to think that President Trump was likely headed this way before Election Day. I mean, you have precious few days left. You've got to make smart decisions about where you send the candidate, or at least where the candidate sends himself. And President Trump has decided Virginia is a place that he is going to come. In fact, he announced it this afternoon as a part of a tweet where he was going after Sleepy Joe Biden and comrade Kamala Harris. He was getting into some of the details of the breaking news today that the left is fighting to keep non-citizens on the ballot, on the voter rolls in the Commonwealth of Virginia. President Trump offering encouragement to Governor Glenn Youngkin as he fights back today. He says, keep fighting, Glenn, and Republicans in Virginia, keep voting early. I will be calling in to Glenn's rally with Laura Trump tomorrow morning to talk about this crazy ruling and announce my final step in Virginia before Election Day. So there's President Trump. Now, what he's announcing really are two events that he's participating in Virginia. He'll be a part of tomorrow's rally with Laura Trump in Chesterfield, Virginia. And then subsequently, he is going to be stopping in Virginia. That's the news today, because he believes he has a genuine shot at those 13 electoral votes. So that's cool. That's a cool piece of news to see. Additionally, Christian Hines is a data analyst who we've had on the show, a political guy, a Republican data analyst in the Commonwealth of Virginia. And he says that yesterday, for the very first time in the entire early voting election cycle, in his model, he has determined that Republicans outvoted Democrats yesterday in early voting, in yesterday's vote, and that the Republican turnout has been gangbusters in Virginia. So this is the kind of momentum you need to keep going. You have to keep this going. Now, as I mentioned, we do have some breaking news today on the issue of Virginia and the way the left is handling losing potentially in the Commonwealth. And they are saying they want non-citizens to stay in the voter rolls and to vote in Virginia's elections. Now, this is not even gray area. This is not a close call. These are people who say that they are non-citizens. By their own admission, they're non-citizens. Fox reporting today, a federal judge on Friday ordered Virginia to halt its removal of potential non-citizens from state voter rolls, a decision expected to restore the voting rights. Fox got that wrong. It's not, you don't have a right to vote if you're a non-citizen. To some 1,600 residents ahead of Election Day. Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin told Fox News shortly after the ruling his administration is planning to file an emergency stay for the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals to block the injunction, which he noted was handed down just 11 days before the election. Here we go again. Election meddling by the United States Department of Justice. In a week where they're doing a lot of that, you saw the letter they sent to Elon Musk earlier this week threatening him for daring to give away money for people who sign a petition where they say they uphold the First and Second Amendment. Glenn Youngkin added that his administration would appeal this decision today all the way to the United States Supreme Court if necessary. If necessary. Here's Youngkin talking today to Harris Faulkner. Take a listen to his remarks.
Yeah, Harris, this is a stunning ruling by a federal judge who is ordering Virginia to reinstate individuals who have self-identified as non-citizens back on the voter rolls. And what's even more astounding is the vast majority of these folks had presented immigration documents confirming that they were non-citizens, and we recently had that verified by federal authorities. So here we are with a judge saying, put people back on the voter rolls who you know are non-citizens. And this is under a law in Virginia that's been in effect since 2006. It has been applied by Republican and Democrat governors alike into this 90-day period. And here we are 11 days before a presidential election, and a federal judge is ordering them back on the voter rolls. It's astounding to me that this could possibly happen. I mean, listen, common sense says non-citizens aren't on the voter rolls, but the Constitution and the law say it as well. And that's why we are immediately petitioning the Fourth Circuit for an emergency stay here on this injunction. And we will immediately go to the U.S. Supreme Court if necessary.
Yeah, the United States Department of Justice, once again, meddling in the election in the waning days, attempting to rig the outcome. And they have to be stopped. They have to be stopped. So there's Glenn Youngkin saying they're filing this emergency petition, wants to get this done on a very accelerated basis to prevent non-citizens from playing any role in the election. Remember, the control of the state legislature just a few years ago was decided by a coin toss. A coin toss. That's how they actually decided the control of the state legislature, because the votes came out dead even. Virginia has a history here where the votes can be very tight. And so here you have a survey today indicating that President Trump is 1 point back. President Trump's internals clearly indicating that this is the place he should spend some time. He has announced now that he is participating in at least 2 events in these closing days of the election in the Commonwealth. And the left is interfering in the election. And now let's pull the lens back to the national level. Today, the New York Times has released its final survey of the 2024 election. It's their final national poll, the New York Times Siena College. And they find that it is, again, this is not an electoral college breakdown. This is the national popular vote assessment, which is not the rules you play by. But if Republicans are doing well in the popular vote, that means they're going to do very well in the electoral college. Republicans are better represented all across the country by these many states. Kamala Harris and Donald J. Trump are locked in a dead heat for the popular vote, the New York Times says today. 48% to 48%. The final national poll by the New York Times and Siena College has found, as Ms. Harris struggles for an edge over Mr. Trump with an electorate that seems impossibly and immovably divided, they write. The result, coming less than 2 weeks before Election Day and as millions of Americans have already voted, is not encouraging for Ms. Harris, the New York Times admits. In recent elections, Democrats have had an edge in the popular vote even when they lost the Electoral College and thus the White House. They have been looking to Ms. Harris to build a strong national lead as a sign that she would do well in such critical swing states as Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. If you go back in time on this New York Times survey, the final survey of each election, you find out some interesting things. Eric Doherty of Florida Voice News posted this today. He said back in 2016, Clinton had a 4-point lead in that survey. A 4-point lead in that survey. She lost the election, as you know. In 2020, Joe Biden had a 9-point lead in that final survey. In the end, the official record shows that he picked up a plus 4 percentage point advantage in the popular vote. Today, it's a tie. It is a tie, an even tie between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris in the popular vote. And that's just among the people that the Siena College and the New York Times surveyed, the people who answered the phones, the people who were willing to give their opinion on this subject. Trump has been notoriously underpolled in each previous election. One of the big questions right now is that happening again? And even if it's not, even if the polls are spot on right now, Trump looks like he's in a good position. If the voters have their way, Trump's in a very good position. And also, the Trump campaign has never been better. You know, the Kamala Harris people are out calling Trump Hitler this week because they literally have nothing. They literally have nothing to offer you other than demonization. They have to demonize Trump. Harris is not impressive in any way on her own. She has not been able to articulate a vision for this country. She has nothing positive to offer whatsoever. The only thing she's offering is fear, division, and the destruction of Donald Trump. That's what she wants. That's what she's promising to the voters. I will destroy him. And so this week they've resorted to calling him a fascist, saying he's like Hitler. That's where they are, 11 days to go. And the Trump campaign, to its great credit, has a new video today that they put out, which I don't think, I could be wrong, but I don't think CNN and MSNBC are going to be showing this to their audience. This gentleman's name is Jerry Worstke. Jerry Worstke. He's 94 years old, and he's a survivor of the Auschwitz death camp. And here he is, saying today that Kamala Harris is completely wrong.
My name is Jerry Worstke. I'm 94 years old and survivor of Auschwitz and the death marches. Adolf Hitler invaded Poland when I was 9 years old. He murdered my parents and most of our family. I know more about Hitler than Kamala will ever know in 1,000 lifetimes. For her to accuse President Trump of being like Hitler is the worst thing I've ever heard in my 75 years living in the United States. I know President Trump, and he would never say this, and Kamala Harris knows this. She owes my parents and everybody else who was murdered by Hitler an apology for repeating this lie.
Why should the Jewish people support President Trump?
Because he's a mensch. I believe that President Trump is definitely going to be good for Israel, because in everything that he's done up to now was in favor. He never double-crossed anyone, and he never showed any weakness. Watching President Trump pray for the hostages at the Ohel and getting to spend time with him so meaningful. He has always stood with the Jewish people and the state of Israel.
Pretty impressive, huh? What a story that guy has, and he's coming out at the age of 94 saying Kamala Harris will never understand any of this, and he stands with Trump. He stands with Trump. 11 days to go, and the left is wielding some of the most vile attacks we've seen.
Do you think Donald Trump is a fascist?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
Yeah, that's the closing argument that Kamala Harris is mounting. Donald Trump is a fascist. Mark Halperin, the political journalist, has been chatting with focus groups about all of this, and they are not impressed with Kamala's pitch.
In the last few days, the vice president has started to talk about Donald Trump as a fascist, as someone who's spoken approvingly of Hitler. What do folks think? Is that something that's persuasive to you? Is that something that you'll factor into your vote? Linda?
To me, it's horrible that she's saying that about him. If he was saying that about her, everybody would be up in arms. I just don't think that's right.
What other folks think about what the vice president's saying, based on accounts of people who've worked with the President Trump? What do folks think about her making those charges and those characterizations?
She obviously thinks it's going to help her. I don't think it does at all. I don't know why, if it was Kelly who heard the president say that, I'm not saying he did or he didn't. I don't think he'd lie. I think you said that, Mark, on an episode. But I think that he had a responsibility to resign the day that was said, if that's true.
Also, a voter says that, in fact, all of this Hitler talk coming out of Kamala's mouth is actually, he's undecided, this guy, is pushing him to Trump.
I can't. I think part of the reason why I'm being pushed towards Trump so strongly is that I find that the Democrats and the left just keep going straight to Hitler all of the time with everything, like it. And if it's not the left pushing Hitler, it's the right pushing Stalin. So it's like we're fighting World War II every single day for every single election. So it's so exhausting. I think it just detracts from, it pushes me away from their position, and it's so hyperbolic that it makes it impossible to have good discussions. And I think it ruins the discourse.
It's not in any way about improving your life at all. It's about destroying the other guy. Let me take a call here. I've got John calling in from Fairfax now, line 5. John, good afternoon, sir. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, Vince. Happy Friday. I love what you're playing. It's like a rat in the corner. They're jumping for the neck. She is just totally out of control. And I think her and Obama and all these people coming out, they're just shocked that America doesn't want to support them. And I think it's just kind of like they're just going off the rocker. My wife's a kindergarten teacher, and watching her the other night on that town hall, and my wife and I, we were both like, honey, your kid's in the class. I mean, you guys do a better job than her talking to the American people.
Yeah. Is that the best that the left has to offer? How is that? How does she end up with the nomination, and then she babbles this nonsense, and nobody even understands what she's attempting to say?
She couldn't even answer a question like, what's your biggest mistake? I mean, be humble, talk about that. She's just hard. She can't even talk. But, going to the generals, I tell you what, Vince, I don't know if Kelly's lying or not, but I got to think there's something up there, because for him to say that to the New York Times, nonetheless, I mean, if he told it to you, I would probably have more trust in that. But he's talking to the New York Times, and she goes right on the podium in her position as vice president and says all of that stuff to spew it. And what about if it's false? Now we got assassination attempt number 3. We got this lady preaching to her choir. Yeah. I mean, what the heck's going on? How is the FCC not censoring her?
And meanwhile, General Kelly made a decision. He wants to defeat Trump. So he's speaking to the New York Times 12 days before the election in an effort to strangle the campaign. He's made an active decision to get involved.
We in the military, I served in the Navy for 20 years. I looked at that man as an amazing leader, and I respect his service, but boy, did he lose a lot of respect.
Yeah, he's trying to get involved in the election right now. And I think the American people are kind of seeing through it all, and God willing they do. President Trump is a good man, and it'll be good to have him back in the White House, focused on taking care of the American people. Right now, he's literally making a Democratic appeal. Please vote for me, because I'm going to deliver you from all of this chaos. And that's why people are supporting him. Thank you, John. I appreciate that call. Stay with us. Josh Boswell joins us next from the Daily Mail. We will talk to him about Doug Emhoff slapping women around. Well, good afternoon to you. It's 3:35 here at News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up, Ed Morrissey is here from Hot Air at 4 o'clock. At 5 o'clock, we talk to Emily Jashinsky from Unheard. And then Ian Pryor is here at 5:30 from America First Legal. We've got a lot to talk with him about in Loudoun County, Virginia, as the parents fight back against the out-of-control tyrannical school board. You can join us, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Kamala Harris's husband, Doug Emhoff, stands accused of slapping a woman so hard in the face he spun her around. The White House gave a buried denial in a news outlet called Semaphore a couple weeks ago. But now the woman at the center of this, the victim, is speaking out. And to my next guest, Josh Boswell joins us now. He's a senior reporter for the Daily Mail with some brand new reporting this week. Josh, good to have you with us, sir.
Hi there. Thanks for having me.
Take us back in time and tell us a little bit about the woman that we now know as Jane, that's the pseudonym, who says that she was struck by Doug Emhoff physically.
So to begin the story, she is a New York lawyer, and she was on Match.com looking for someone to date back in March 2012, and she matched with Doug. Doug was based in LA at the time. He was an attorney as well at Venable, the law firm. But he said, I'm in New York all the time. I'd love to meet you. So they go for a date. It's going pretty well. But then about an hour in, she said he actually invited his son along on the date. So that was kind of the first odd thing that happened. But she was getting on well with him. They continued dating. Just a month later, he invited her to Los Angeles. He flew her out there, and they actually went house hunting because he was looking for a new house. He was kind of in the end stages of his divorce from his first wife that he'd been going through, that he had 2 kids with. She met his kids. She met his parents. He was moving really fast. He was making comments to her about marriage, about having children. And then by the time it got to May, they had been dating for 3 months. She had got a couple of tickets to this extremely exclusive event, the Amphar Gala, which is like a charity dinner event, A-list star-studded event that was running alongside the Cannes Film Festival in southern France. So she takes Doug with her, and they're having this wonderful night, she tells me. But then at the end, about 2 to 3 a.m., they're in the line to get their taxi to go back to their hotel. It's a long line. And she decides to hop out of it and go up to the valet to slip him $100 to see if she can get to the front of the queue to get home faster. She says Doug sees her, thinks that she's flirting with the valet, comes up and slaps her so hard in the face that she spins around. She was completely taken unawares by this. It was extremely shocking to her, she told me. And she slapped him back with each hand twice on the face. She gets into the car that the valet is ushering her into, and she's trying to get back to the hotel on her own without Doug, of course. But he forces his way into the cab, she says. And so she's quite worried at that point, and she immediately calls her good friend, a male successful businessman in New York. So he's just kind of going to bed at that time because she's in France, he's in New York. And he takes the call. I spoke to him as well, and he remembers this. She tells him exactly what happened. And then the next day, she questions Doug about it. And he tells her, he doesn't express any remorse. And he uses a tennis metaphor, she said, because he was into tennis. He said, oh, well, it's no big deal because you got one down the line and across the court, referring to her slapping him back. And so that's the end of it. No apology, nothing like that. So she never sees him again. They exchange a couple of texts afterwards, just her asking him to pay her back for something, him requesting a suit that he left at hers that she promptly threw in the trash. And that's her story.
Yes. And you've, and to corroborate this, you have, I know some of the documents, the paperwork showing their travel agenda, his name on those travel documents. I assume that you also, did you have the text messages as well? So you saw a lot of evidence to support that they very much were dating.
I saw a lot of evidence. So to list that out, I have photos of the two of them together. I have the metadata from some of those photos showing that she was in the places that she said at that time. They've got the GPS coordinates. It's got the timestamps on it.
Yeah.
I also have emails that show, her referring to being with Doug at the time at this hotel. The emails are between her and a friend that she actually went to this Anfal Gala with, along with Doug. I have the itinerary, as you said, that has Doug and her name on it. It all points towards, the story that she is telling. I also spoke to multiple friends, including in this contemporaneous account, the guy who she spoke to immediately after it happened, who say that, her story is exactly the same that she'd told them back, when it happened.
This story follows a familiar pattern. It's you find out about the original allegation, and then you get a denial from Doug Emhoff in the White House, where they gave, a very buried denial and semaphore. And I say buried, I think they included it in a newsletter about 4 items down, and made it seem like there wasn't much to talk about. But it's a denial to the idea that he had physically abused this woman, slapped her at overseas. And now she's coming out and speaking to you. What brought her out?
So the way this story happened was back in August, I broke the story about Doug having an affair with his kid's nanny and elementary school teacher. That affair broke up his marriage. He allegedly got her pregnant as well. The school ended up terminating her employment, or she left. It was a sorry state of affairs. We broke that story. That got the attention of Jane's friends. They had been very upset seeing that the campaign were using Doug to portray this image of a feminist, someone who's an ally to women. He was giving all these media interviews, harping on that point. And they knew a very different side to him, this side that Jane had told them about. So they were, and actually, some of these friends, they're hard-boiled Democrats. They voted Democrat, for all past elections they voted in. But to them, this story was more important than politics. And it was only when the campaign, Kamala's campaign, started using Doug as this feminist icon that they decided to come forward. Jane herself, though, was very reluctant to come forward. When I contacted her, she did not want to be on the record. She did not want to speak out about this. But after I published my story at the beginning of this month from the accounts of the friends telling this incident, Doug denied it through a spokesperson in this small publication and continued to portray himself as a feminist. And that really tipped Jane over the edge. She felt like she needed to speak out and set the record straight.
So you mentioned his prior affair with his daughter's nanny. That is something that the White House has admitted to, and they said there was an affair, but they didn't admit to a pregnancy or anything else like that. In your reporting, you reveal that that Doug Emhoff told Jane all about this, correct?
That's right, and that's part of what got the attention of these sources. It was when I published that story, Jane's sitting there thinking, oh my God, Doug told me about this. So this was when she went to visit him in LA. Remember I said, a month into their dating, he flew her out there. And she said they were in the car together driving, and she had this kind of weird feeling because he had been going through his divorce with his first wife, Kirsten. She felt like that Kirsten had the upper hand over Doug. She didn't know why. So she asked him outright. And Doug confessed to her, she said, about this affair. He said that he cheated on his wife with he described it as the kid's teacher. And he said that the teacher had accused him of getting her pregnant and causing her to have a miscarriage. This is what he's telling Jane, she said. And he didn't say that there was anything physical. He did say that he got angry at the teacher and yelled at her. That's what Jane told me. And that the nanny and the teacher had claimed that this caused her to have a miscarriage. Doug characterized it in that conversation as the teacher trying to, pull a fast one on him or was making it up. But after Jane had a slapping incident, she then looked back on that story and saw it in a new light. She kind of, went along with what Doug said at first, but then afterwards she started to think about it again. And so, he's been telling this story, it seems, and admitting it even 12 years ago.
Can you tell me what you think of the White House's response and the Kamala Harris's campaign response, or lack thereof, to all of this? I'm struck by the fact that you are, Josh Boswell, a reporter for the Daily Mail. People might not realize this, but the Daily Mail is one of the most read news sites on the entire planet. And yet they're acting like they don't have to respond at all to this. They're pretending like it doesn't exist. What does that tell you?
Yeah, I was really quite surprised by that. I think that they do have a responsibility to respond to it, because the allegations are very important. They go to the heart of both the campaign and Doug's public office role as second gentleman currently of the United States. And we need a response on this. He's portraying himself as a feminist. The campaign is doing the same. And yet these allegations that are, backed up by multiple sources with documentary evidence, are credible, and so they need a response. The White House not responding to it, I think, it appears to me to be a strategy of just hoping that it will go away, and it hasn't. I'm continuing to report on this. Jane has come forward because of his denial in this very small publication at Semaphore that was done a couple of weeks ago.
Yes,
and we've now seen more, center-left mainstream media starting to pick up on it. Today, the Guardian newspaper published a piece about it. We've had the Daily Beast reporting on it yesterday when my story came out. And local ABC affiliates are also reporting on the story. It's starting to break through into other parts of the media. And I think that it's only a matter of time before they have to talk about it, but they have never once responded to me, and I've sent them many requests for comment about this.
Josh, I'm often told if a man feels inclined to strike a woman, that it's likely a pattern of behavior. Do you have any reason to believe that more stories like this could emerge?
I currently have no evidence of other physical violence committed by Doug, but you do have the nanny school teacher claiming to Doug, allegedly, that he caused her to have a miscarriage. I think that needs further investigation, something I'm digging into, and I think others should too. And there is one extra element to that I did put in my previous reporting about this. I was trying to substantiate that incident, right, and have a look at what happened around the nanny and the place she was staying at the time that she was allegedly pregnant. There was an LAPD call out to that address in 2009. And the LAPD won't give me details of who called out or who was involved in the incident. But what they do say is that it was a life-threatening emergency that police responded to with sirens on. I want to know what that incident was about. Was Doug involved in that? Was that what the nanny was referring to at the time? I think that this is a topic that needs further investigation.
Yes. Finally, do you know if that's unusual? Does the LAPD usually withhold the details of a 911 call like that? Or is this special for people that are related to Kamala Harris?
That's a good question. I mean, I requested these records under the Public Records Act. Anybody can do so. Anybody could have. And there are certain restrictions under that act. There are things that the police are allowed to withhold. They don't necessarily have to. They could be open and give me everything, but they are allowed to withhold certain information. They've done so in this case, even though there is a very strong public interest in, I think, releasing that information.
Well, Josh Boswell, congratulations on the reporting. This seems very important, and I'm glad you're digging into it. Thank you for sharing this information with us today, too. We really appreciate it. And I encourage people to read all of this on the Daily Mail's website. Thank you, Josh. Josh Boswell, to his great credit, I mean, that is an excellent piece of reporting. He established everything about Jane's actual relationship to Doug Emhoff. They clearly were traveling together. He's got all the documents to support that. And she says Doug Emhoff struck her, hit her in the face so hard she spun around. And the Kamala campaign is doing everything they can to try and make that story wither on the vine. Let me go to the phones now. I've got Jay calling in from Arlington, line 2. Hello, Jay. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Good afternoon, Vince. I think the left would have us believe that this story, even if it were true, is not relevant to this election. But I think it very, very much is. This is not just about the second gentleman having knocked up the nanny and knocked around the lawyer, but it's also a story that Kamala made her public presence known with Dianne Feinstein, Senator Feinstein, and the Blasey Ford situation. Feinstein had thought there was not enough there to bring it forward until then Senator Harris made it a platform of her rise to countrywide knowledge.
Yep.
So it's a part of who she is, and she also made it further, as you pointed out, that they're trying to redefine masculinity. And, the final point that I would bring forward is your former colleague and friend, Tucker Carlson. I just listened to his YouTube clip, his speech the other day, and the metaphor he used to describe the current Trump election is dad's home and he's pissed. And I think that's the right's version of masculinity, is that working with the wife in that case to raise children and to raise children to protect women. And the left has expelled men from that relationship.
Yeah.
And the right very much wants dad to come back into the home.
What a smart summary, Jay. Thank you for that. It's tying all of those things together. And what you're describing is the difference between disorder and order. When you're striking women and pretending that they're not a real category and suggesting that men can supplant them or abuse them, that's disorder. Meanwhile, order, as you point out, is when things are in balance, where women are treated with respect. And that is really what's at stake in this election in so many ways. And
absolutely.
And you and I want to be on the side of order.
Yep. And the left has thrown men out of the family, both literally and metaphorically, whether those are single men or single fathers or just a role of men in a functioning society.
Yes, so much so that they scoff at the very notion that you would figure out a way to appeal to men at all in an election. I
think that's why they're losing men.
Yeah, big time across all demographics. Thank you, Jay. What a smart point. I appreciate all of that. All right.
Thanks.
Yes, sir. Coming up, Ed Morrissey is going to chat with us from Hot Air. We're going to talk about the chaos, speaking of disorder, going on inside of the Kamala Harris campaign. The finger pointing is beginning. Democrats are trying to figure out who's more to blame, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris. They'll pick someone. I bet you it's Trump in the end. Stay with us. Ed Morrissey, just moments away.